Hey, what's going on? This is the Empowered People Podcast, where each and every week we are going to tell, share, and listen to stories that are meant to motivate us to action, to motivate us to movement. We believe that so much success, opportunity, education only comes when we're willing to get up and move. Guys, each and every Thursday, as you know already, if you haven't listened to the first two episodes where we interviewed Gina Lichty of Girls on the Run, you got to go back and listen to that. But each Thursday, we are trying to hear the stories about awesome men and women throughout Kansas City that are making the city brighter. People that are bringing hope and transformation and really challenging the status quo. There are very, very few people that get me so pumped up and so excited as the dude that is sitting here with me right now, Shane Fowler of Mind Made. I don't even know fully how we met. Maybe we'll get into that. But I've known about him for a little over a year. Oh, well, I know that he designed one of the dopest coffee shops in Kansas City, Monarch Coffee. But it's just from a distance, I could tell, I remember the first time I looked at his website, I didn't know, hey man, is this guy out for social justice? Is he an architect? Is he like a nonprofit? What is he a GC? What is this guy doing? And as you listen to this conversation and we get into who Shane is before what Shane did or is doing, you're going to find out, man, this guy he brings a lot to the table. He's an amazing person and a good friend. He's actually designing our space right now. So yeah, without further ado, please welcome Shane Fowler of Mind Made.
Whoa, that is a lot. You talked me up big time. I hope I can fill those shoes. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Well, and you know, before as we started talking, dude, it's okay to be nervous. Like podcasting, I know it's weird to talk with a thing in your face.
Definitely out of my wheelhouse, yeah.
But dude, you know, for those that don't know you, that don't even know what Mind Made is, that aren't from Kansas City or anything like that, you know, maybe give us a little 2-minute intro of who you are.
Oh man, where to start? Well, yeah, you're right. This is a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I typically am a pretty reticent person. Like I try to stay to myself and everything needs to be pretty well thought out before I say anything. So to just be like off the cuff is pretty uncomfortable, but you know, we grow and we push ourselves and that's where we need to be. So that's why I'm here. Little 2-minute intro about myself. I mean, I don't even know where to start. There's so much. I would say, grew up for the most part in Springfield, Missouri, moved around a lot. Had an interesting childhood, I guess you could say. And then, went to college to become an architect and moved to Kansas City to follow my first wife. I followed a girl and that didn't work out. And now I'm happily married doing my own thing. And that's like a nutshell, like super condensed version of myself. So
yeah. So super condensed version. And also you said 4 words in that opening intro that I didn't know what they meant. It's funny. Sometimes I feel like when you talk, I do just fill in my own definitions for words.
I hope so. Yeah. And you're probably right still.
No, definitely terrible. But I had to do that growing up because I was so bad at school. So I remember, 9th grade it was physical science. I had to say the word specific. And I don't know if you noticed how I just said it weird, specific, because I'm like so nervous. I couldn't say it. I tried like 13 times while reading out loud in school. Really was stupid, really struggled. You do not come across as a stupid person. What was your
I've got you all fooled, like everyone here.
But so, you know, growing up, was education that was something that was pushed in your family? Was it a priority? Were your parents college educated? Like what? Tell us about your education.
Wow, that's a big topic. So it's interesting to hear you use specific as an example because actually my stepdaughter is dyslexic and she says Pacific. So it's it's a small world. But in terms of education, neither one of my parents was college educated. My dad was, my biological father was, he was a manager at a grocery store, produce department. And then my mom just kind of stayed at home for the most part, but then did some reception jobs as well. So neither one of them were, but they pushed it very hard, especially after my parents split. My mom was determined that I got good grades and went on to college and was as successful as she wanted me to be and as I could be. But yeah, I mean, anything below an A, we got grounded.
So, grounded, not rewarded for A's, but grounded.
No. There was no reward. Like that was the expectation, which I actually love in retrospect, Mom. Thank you. But no, we got punished if we got below anything below an A. And like a B+ was acceptable sometimes if I had a good excuse, which I made up often. But yeah, I would get grounded if I got anything below that.
And so you say siblings?
Yeah, my younger sister is 6 years younger than me, had a drastically different childhood, I would say, than I did. But yeah, she also got education pushed on her pretty hard as well. Yeah.
So you say a different childhood than what you experienced, your sister experienced. I would love to hear a little bit more about that, just because of this reason. Like, Shane, you're an entrepreneur. You are an architect. You are college educated. You are married with 2 children now, right? Two
stepkids.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, in a lot of ways, you're succeeding at life. And I think hearing the origin story of kind of what you were brought up in is super helpful, not in any type of way to shame or heap, guilt upon anybody. But,
Sure.
I've tried to share my story so that people can possibly go, hey, if he could do it, so could I. Or if he overcame that, I could probably do this,
Sure.
So when you say like your childhood, what do you mean by that?
That opens a big door. But I would say my childhood was interesting, to say the least. And I've just recently dealt with this. I kind of numbed it for a really long time. And after my first divorce, I actually went to some leadership conferences and saw some psychologists, and just recently dealt with it. But so my father was an alcoholic, manic depressive, bipolar, and a drug dealer. And so when I was super young, and he was actually very, very verbal and sometimes physically abusive to my mom, even though she would never admit that. But, everything was high intensity all the time when he was angry. And then it was just drunk, because he would drink like a complete fifth of booze every night. And so I would remember he was in with some crooked cops. So like, I remember a drug deal going down where a kilo of coke was thrown down on the table when I was in the room. And like, I remember a guy coming in the rain in a trench coat. I remember this very vividly. We were playing like Monopoly at the table, and we had like that old school 80s butterfly painting. I don't know if any of you guys ever remember that. It was like very orange. Anyway, yeah, exactly. I digress. And then a knock came at the door, and I answered it. It was pretty late at night, rainy, cold, and a guy in a trench coat was at the door, and he asked for my dad, and he actually opened his coat, and there was like a sawed-off shotgun like over his thing. So I answered the door to that one time, and I remember that. A lot of drug deals in like the backyard, just like pot, like small dealings. So it was just like, it was a different lifestyle. It was very weird. It was just weird. I didn't have a lot of stability. My mom never really talked about it or anything like that. And then one day she got some support from a couple of her lady friends, and they packed her up and we moved. And, that situation was brutal. My dad actually ended up following us out of town, like chased us down, drove all the way to Springfield. We lived in Moore, Oklahoma at the time, which is right outside of Oklahoma City. Drove all the way, and then called my grandma's house nonstop, all night. Just hang up, dial, hang up, dial, hang up, dial, hang up, dial. And then there was one where he actually picked up the phone and the recording came on, and then he said, I don't know if I can do this, and actually pulled the trigger to a gun and just let the service exterminate at the end. Like, he didn't hang up or anything. So he basically faked his suicide with everyone like just sitting there listening. And I knew I had to grow up like really, really quick. And that was like a really tough time, but I just grew up.
Sorry, how old were you when that happened?
I would have had to have been 8 or 9 probably. Maybe 10. It was somewhere in there, like 8 to 10 range. Yeah, I'm trying to remember, but yeah.
Sorry, before 10 kind of all blurs together.
Yeah,
You're like, I was
exactly.
younger than 10.
Yeah.
I didn't like girls yet.
Right.
They still had cooties, and we played boys chasing girls on the playground. Dude, that's
something like that.
It's so amazing to me. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say it's funny how we can constantly, like, even as I was telling the first 10 stories of the Empowered People podcast, and I'm talking about the pain and suffering and the kind of hardship I went through, it's easy to kind of live in your head and think I'm the only one that understands.
Right.
No one else has experienced anything like me. Mm-hmm. When you walked in today, I've known you for a year, we've been friends. I would have never thought this guy's seen drug deals go down in his backyard. This guy knows what it's like to, you know, see guns and crazy crap happen and see his mom get abused. Like, I never thought that. And so I would just say to each and every person listening, sorry not to interrupt, but
no, you're fine.
To each and every person listening, you're probably not the only one.
Yeah.
It probably would help to open up and talk about. Don't hold this stuff in. Don't try to deal with it yourself. You know, open up.
Right.
There's other people out there.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And I would also say, so after I dealt with it, there was probably a 2-year span of time where I almost used it as my crutch a little bit. Like, oh, I got daddy issues, my childhood was tough. But I also say that's not the case. Like, don't let that hinder you and like, be a thing that defines you. Like, because I did that for a while, and I really didn't like it. I was like, man, I'm just dealing with this. I just realized how kind of unfortunate some of the experiences were in my childhood, but it wasn't that bad to the point where I just have to let it like weigh me down all the time, and it has to be my main point of conversation. Like, just deal with it, move on, use it as your strength, have that story, be confident in it, exactly for what you were speaking to have that camaraderie and community, but be a support for others. So
yeah. Well, and so you're moving around. So you move from Moore, Oklahoma to, say it again,
Springfield, Missouri. Yeah.
With your mom.
Yeah.
Did you kind of stay there for a while after you were 10? I mean, like middle school, high school?
Yeah. So lived with my grandma. My grandpa just passed on my mom's side. So it was my grandma living by herself, and then my mom moved in with her. My sister, I said she had a different childhood because she was 2. We have 6 years difference between us. So she was much younger, doesn't remember much of that stuff at all. But yeah, I was raised by 2 women for the majority of like my teenage years. And it was awesome. Like, yeah, I had my own troubles or whatever. But yeah, I lived in Springfield, and then we moved to Harrison, Arkansas, for a couple years. And then we moved back to Springfield. So yeah, just kind of moved around all that.
And so while you moved around with your mom, it just sounds to me like your mom didn't give you a pass. Like you said, like you got grounded if you didn't get an A. It seemed like there's chaos going on. Your dad's faking a suicide. You're moving all over the country.
Yeah.
And yet she's still saying, hey, dude, I don't care. Do your homework.
Yeah, I think she wanted me to excel. And she knew the conditions that maybe were working against me, and she wasn't going to let that be an excuse. That was one thing about my mom. Like, she was really tough and really sharp. She was loving and caring. And to be frank, I was a shithead back then. Like, I was dealing with a lot of stuff, and I didn't know it. So I was treating everybody pretty poorly. So yeah, she was pretty hard on me, but rightfully so. And, you know, I wouldn't change that for anything. Like, I actually really appreciate the standard that she held me to. And, you know, my grandma was the same way, but she had a lot of grace. Her name was Grace, oddly enough, but she had a lot of grace towards me and a lot of patience, and just showed me what love was. And my mom did too, but we were kind of at ends and battling a little bit. So, yeah, she didn't give me any excuses, and rightfully so. Like,
well, and the reason I point that out is because I feel like there's a lot of, whether it's you're married and you don't want to be hard on your spouse, or you feel imperfect and so you don't want to be hard on your kids, but it's like, showing up and caring and pushing someone, whether it's a child, a spouse, a brother, a sister, whoever it is, a friend, to be better is okay.
Oh, definitely.
It pays dividends in people. And I think sometimes it's like, you know, that whole like judge not lest you be judged gets us so gun shy to try to push other people to hold them to another standard that it's like, no, it's okay. I'm not saying be a judgmental hypocrite prick. I'm not saying that, but it's like, you know, yeah, we all have junk and we're all imperfect. And if you have kids, man, you will realize very quickly your imperfections.
I think to that point, like I've learned about myself that I'm a challenger, a little bit of a skeptic, I guess, sometimes, or a cynic. But what I do know about myself is that I have a good heart in those moments. And what I've realized too is in those moments of conflicts, or me pushing someone or challenging, it's very uncomfortable for those people, but conflict is actually healthy as long as it has heart in it. And I think for me, all I want is that other individual to be as powerful as they possibly can. I think, I don't know if I should say this or not, but I think today we live by a victim's mentality sometimes. And in retrospect, like, my mom actually pushed me to be as strong as I possibly could. And I think there's like a subconscious level that I want to push everyone else because I see the results of that. And all I want is for you to be powerful. And not powerful in terms of like greedy or rapacious way, but powerful in terms of you have this source within you that you can inflict on others in a positive manner. So, yeah, I think in those moments of challenge, just realize that it's conflict and not battle, which the difference is battle means you intend to hurt that person, where conflict, you're actually working towards a common goal, and it's just uncomfortable. And I think that's a big difference.
That's extremely good. I know to go to a really dorky example last night with my oldest son, Cooper. He's 9 years old.
Kids bring it out for sure.
Well, it was so funny. So I was hard on him, quite a bit. We just got a new puppy, and I'm telling him to make his bed, and his mom, had a weekend to herself, and I was just kind of really kind of harping on him to help.
Yeah.
Not being a jerk, but really kind of harping on him. And that night I went out to buy dinner, and I bought sushi because he loves sushi. And I brought it home and gave it to him. And then he kind of later on in the night broke down and started crying. He's like, "You're just harping on me so much." And I was like, "Buddy, like what?" And he's like, "I got to make my bed, and I got to walk the dog, and I got to clean up the dishes." And I was like, "Buddy, that's called growing up, and you're never going to get away from that.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm pushing you because I love you or I hate you?" And he's like, "I think you love me." And I was like, "Who loves sushi in this house?" And he's like, "Nobody but me." And I was like, "And who bought you?"
Yeah,
it's just like
right.
taking those little moments to like try to tell them or show them why you're doing it. And I know it seems crazy, and I think you're right. It's easy to play the pity party.
Right.
And I'm glad your mom didn't do that. Was there any other people in your life that kind of pushed you? Like you talked about your grandma, was she a big influence in your childhood at not letting you say the poor me?
So I was actually thinking about this on the drive over here, and I wouldn't say that there's, as shallow as it seems, there wasn't a lot of people that influenced me, I don't think, because I had a really hard time letting people in after the experience that I went through. So I was always on the defense, and I always had my walls up. And so I would say, in retrospect, people didn't influence me, but they did leave an effect on me one way or another. I was never going to show that. And I think I took like small, incremental, like granular pieces of experiences and people, and like threw them in a big bag and shook it up, and like that was my life experience. So I would say overall, my entire life influenced me, and that sounds super cheesy, but not one person had like an overarching significant effect on my life, I guess, is probably the easy. And it's my own fault, probably.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a survival mechanism of like,
right.
You've been hurt and you want to keep people at arm's length.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, probably one of the biggest influences in my life, Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting.
Right.
Which he would mock in the movie, right? Because do you remember there's that scene? If you haven't seen that movie, shame on you. Get freaking Netflix. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, you gotta
You're
watch
probably
it.
one of 10 human beings alive in America that doesn't have Netflix. And there's this scene where I think Robin Williams asks him, who's your hero? Who pushes you? And it's funny, it's my favorite movie, but I don't remember Ben Affleck's name. And it's Chucky. And he's like, Chucky pushes me. And he's like, Chucky would freaking lay down in traffic for you and bash a dude's head in with a baseball bat.
Right.
No, I'm saying like, who pushes you to a higher standard? And he's like, Van Gogh and Shakespeare. And he starts listening to all these people, and he's like, oh, cool, all these dead guys.
Yeah.
So you don't know what it's like to hold you. There's that scene where he's like, you don't know what it's like to hold your best friend in your arms in Vietnam, dying.
Right.
You don't let anybody in because you're scared of being hurt.
Right.
And it's like, it's a normal thing that like you kind of, you're too nervous. And I remember letting somebody in because, of course, bad childhood, and I let a coach in. His name was Coach Clay. I don't remember Clay's last name, but I remember he took a different coaching job. Like he was my, not a high school coach, a middle school coach, and then he left. And it literally felt like my dad walking out. And I remember crying. And I remember I was a wrestler, 7th grade wrestler in wrestling practice, starting to cry. And other wrestling buddies of mine, Dennis, Corey, and John, were like, hey, dude, what's going on over there?
Yeah,
like, what's going on? But it hurts so much. And so sometimes it's safer to do that.
Right.
So then if people didn't influence you, who influenced you to continue to pursue like not only good grades, but like to go to college and to kind of pursue what I would say is one of the freaking hardest degree paths out there in architecture?
Yeah. So there's a lot backstory to that. I'd say probably God to some extent, not to get too spiritual or anything, but my faith saved me in a lot of ways.
Well, no, talk about that. What do you mean?
So after my parents got divorced, I was pretty pissed off at God and rejected him a lot and went down this path where I was just on constant turmoil. And incendiary in a lot of ways, just tried to set fire to everything I came in contact with.
Incendiary?
Incendiary.
What does that even mean?
It's
You're
just like
brilliant, dude.
It's like just destructive and setting fire to things. But I mean, that was me. By the way, it's not that. Like, I look up.
You're brilliant.
I like have a lot of words that I just look up often. I'm like, I'm going to use that someday.
You're the guy that has the daily calendar with the word of the day.
I actually do get updates on words. That's funny. You called me on that. But yeah, so my mom just constantly took me to church and constantly made me go to church, and I'd throw a fit. But she made me get out of bed every Sunday and go to church. And I probably did it for my grandma because I always wanted to like show face for my grandma. I just started listening more and more, and like just how much it was about love and like a pure form of love and respect and dignity. There was just a lot of positive attributes to it. And I think I latched onto that as like my escape a little bit, in terms of it filled me up more than a lot of other things did. And so that kind of set me on the right path, as well as just like people who constantly poured into me. My youth pastors, coaches, even if they were small amounts. And then my mom got remarried with a guy she met at church. And his father, so that was my stepdad, Roger, still my stepdad. They're still married. His dad, Roger Sr., was probably one of the most positive male figures, not only in my life, but that I've ever witnessed in my life. Like, I just lucked out there. And he instilled so much into me. I can't even thank him enough. He's passed now, but I'd say he definitely set me on the right path, like without a doubt.
What were some of the things that maybe you did with him, or he, do you remember any particular stories or anything?
I think it was the way he just handled himself. Have you ever met a person and it's just like, something special about that person? They say it about athletes all the time. Like, that kid's special. That kid's got something. And I think that men, or people in general, men, women, children, whatever, they're the same way. Like, there's something special about him, and he just had that. The way he handled himself, the way he talked, the way he showed love to his wife, the way he showed love to his kids, the way he handled business, I don't know, the way he served his country, and then he passed that on. There's just so much, and it's just through living. Like, it's in the minutia. Like, it's in the small things that you do throughout your life that pave way to others to take notes. Like, that's all I could do. I just sat there and took notes about how he lived his life, and he set me straight. Like, he wouldn't take my shit. And I'd never met anyone like that. Like, my mom dated like 5 or 6 guys. And these guys, a couple of them were muscleheads, a couple of them were super intelligent guys, and I fucking ruined their lives on purpose because I knew I have a certain intuition, not to be like hubris or anything or egotistical. It's like I can just read people pretty well. And it's just a certain intuition. I've just come to accept that about myself, and I could rip those guys apart at the seams. And it was just, I knew they wouldn't want to stick around if I would do that. So I did. But Roger, my stepdad, toughed it out. And I think it was because of Roger Sr., my grandpa, told him to. But when they were married, I turned it on even higher. And he just wouldn't take it. Like, he was steel, man. And it was awesome for me.
And so where did you live with your mom and Roger?
So this was Springfield, and then we moved as a family to Harrison for a few years, Harrison, Arkansas, and then we ended up moving back to Springfield, so we kind of hopped around for a little while. But at that point in time when they got married and I experienced kind of the come to terms, that was in Springfield the first time. And I can tell you, I haven't cried a lot in my adult life, but like at his funeral, they asked me to give, what is the eulogy? Is that it? Yeah.
How did you forget that word?
I know.
It's because the camera's rolling.
Yeah, probably.
The podcast is rolling.
But I like bawled. Like, yeah, just because of like out of sheer respect,
Yeah, no, I of course don't know him, but it's amazing when you meet those older people that are just steady.
Yeah, man.
Because they've like experienced stuff, and they're like, yeah, your 13-year-old attitude's not going to affect me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here. You can hate me. You can do whatever,
Yeah,
Once again,
exactly.
going back to that Good Will Hunting, you guys got to watch that movie, dude. But whenever, that one of the closing scenes where Robin Williams sees all the pictures of how Matt Damon, Will, was abused, and he just says, hey, man, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
And he just breaks down. He tries to push him away and stuff, and Robin Williams just keeps saying it's not your fault. And it's like, kids that go through divorce, that see traumatic things, that bounce around from, because, you're a great student, but, man, switching schools isn't easy. Going from Oklahoma to Missouri, to Arkansas, back to Missouri. I mean, the curriculums and stuff. I mean, you talk about how you hear people say that, the public school system is broken or is flawed. Man, one of the worst things is going not only from school district to school district, state to state. Yeah. Good grief.
I think, oh man, that's a really interesting point. You guys brought up so much about my childhood that I never even think about anymore. But definitely moving around. But I think you're a culmination of your life, and you can see that as a fissure, like as a crack in who you are, or you can see it as your bonding agent. And I think for me, I had to adapt constantly, and I had to overcome. When I was in middle school, I was as wide as I was tall. That's what I tell everyone. I was like a bowling ball. And I was the second string center for our football team. Moving around.
It takes a special breed of person to be the second string center.
I know, exactly. I was better than the first string, by the way. There was politics with the coach, for the record.
Sure you were.
But, talking about moving around, but also being heavy, like I was an automatic target for a long time. So you had to adapt.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of friends that you, from your middle school or high school years, that you keep in touch with?
Hell no.
No. Yeah. But so still haven't answered the question, like who pushed you to go to college to pursue architecture?
Yeah. See how this works? I go off on random tangents.
Brilliant though. I mean, don't stop. It's just, I think it's, and the reason I want you to speak to this is right now, which I would never say everyone should go to college.
Right.
But it's almost like this pendulum shift, especially in the motivated, high entrepreneurial, I want to make a difference. I want to inspire. I want to influence. F college. It's just racking up debt. It doesn't teach me how to run a business. And I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I think that's low-hanging fruit for a lot of the entrepreneurs, right? Like they latch on to one another, and it's kind of like this waterfall effect where everybody starts saying the same stuff. And for me, I'm the polar opposite of that. My college experience blew everything out of the water prior to anything I did. High school academics were a breeze. I didn't even have to try. As a matter of fact, the teacher usually just had me help other students because I got done with my work so fast. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that it was easy until I got to college, and then I really was tried in my academics and also who I was as a person. Like, it really challenged me. So it's easy to say that it's debt. Well, so is a house. So is your car. So is a lot of the watches that these people are wearing. So for me, it's not a debt. It was an investment. I think you can be smart about it. I wish I would have gone after more scholarships. I wish I would have stayed in band or in basketball and tried to pursue that a little bit more. So yeah, it's debt. I'm still paying it off. I'm close, but I'm still paying it off.
And where did you go to college? I mean, there's not only student loans, but you could go to community college for 2 years.
Right,
you could do
there's
a
strategies.
lot of things. In high school, stop taking freaking study hall and take college credit courses.
Right.
So that you don't have to pay as much.
Yeah.
So where did you go?
I went to Drury University in Springfield, Missouri. It's a small private school. It's the only accredited architecture school in Missouri, technically. Undergrad. So graduate is Wash U, and then undergrad is Drury. But so what inspired me is I actually hit a realization point when I was in high school that I wanted to help people. And I had this weird sense to help kids. And I think it's just because I realized how much pain and how innocent kids are and how volatile that life can be. So I really wanted to help kids. So I went to Medical Explorers, which in high school you can go and intern essentially. And I wanted to be a pediatrician. And so I actually was looking at colleges to be a pediatrician, and I went to one school, and they brought in a psychologist, and it was just for pediatricians specifically. And they said, if you can't handle losing as many kids as you're going to save, I want you to seriously think about this profession. And I already knew how hard I was on myself, even though I internalized everything. And I was like, I actually don't know if I could take that home and be like a healthy father and live healthily. As much as it hurt to say that, because that's desperately what I wanted to be, and in retrospect, I probably still could have done it and been fine and maybe been the best pediatrician ever, so don't doubt yourself. But so I decided not to pursue that, actually. And at the time, I didn't really know what else to do, and it just kind of fell naturally. I was like, I'm decent at math. I love drawing. And so architecture was kind of the natural transition. And then I started looking at schools for architecture.
For graduate school for architecture?
Undergrad.
Oh, okay.
So I was undergrad. Yeah.
Okay. You know, I went to school to be an electrical engineer for a while, but I was always fascinated by how architectures kind of saw what was possible, saw, you know, the cool aspects of what could be, and you know, kind of cast vision. It was almost like they were visionaries. And then, of course, construction workers are like, oh, you dumb you don't know, you know, that looks good on paper, not in real life.
Right,
and, you know, we could come up with 55 reasons why it wasn't going to work, but it was like, yeah, do you have a better idea? Like, you're not the one doing it. So I've always had a respect for it and thought it was really neat. I never would have thought like, oh, I like math and doodling. Let's choose a terrible career path. You know what I mean? That's like somebody saying.
I feel like that's me in a nutshell, though.
That's like somebody saying like, scrubs look comfy, I'm gonna be a doctor.
Yeah,
I'm like,
pretty much.
Do you realize what you're signing up for? And so you say you were pushed academically. Like, what was your college life like? I mean, did you date? Did you have a social life?
Yeah, actually, I was in a fraternity. Oddly enough, I was a Sigma Nu, a jury, and so I had that aspect, which.
Was it an architecture fraternity, though? No, you're like doing math on the wall?
No, it was just a regular old fraternity. So I had that aspect, and I did actually date. I had a high school sweetheart, and we both went to jury, and we dated for a little while. And then she ended up cheating on me, so that was fun. And then
it's not fun.
But yeah, I mean, so I dated and I did the social life, but I kind of lost touch with that. I feel like I was living in a void a little bit when I was in college, and it was like just a self-expression, how to be creative and figure out who I am void. And so I really did like swan dive into architecture and philosophy and all that other stuff that came with college. But it was so fantastic. Like I figured out who I was, and I fell in love with things I didn't even know were out there. And just because I feel like high school, middle school, all that, you're just going through the motions, right? And I feel like public school specifically, no judgment on public school. It's just like, this is what's expected of you, hit the marks, and that's it. But college, it was like, I don't know. It was crazy. It was like a microcosm of just opportunities and learning and figuring out where I fit into all that and what I believe, and no one was questioning it because it was all self-taught to some extent.
See, that's one thing I wish would change. I mean, I think you're right that a lot of people go into college not knowing the career path they want or who they are and things like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, it's easy to say when I have a 9, 7, 5, and 2-year-old. But it's like, I hope I prepare them so that when they graduate high school, they know if they want to go to college or if they want to go overseas or if they want to start a company or if they want to work at Empowered Electric. Like, you would want, because I feel like, so many kids enter into college not really knowing who they are or what they want. And that's where it gets expensive.
Right.
I have a good buddy that went to school, got a history degree, loved history, wanted to be a history teacher, graduated with a history degree, and found out, you need a teaching certificate. You got to go back to school. You can't just graduate with a history degree or like psychology. You brought that up, where it's people like graduate with a bachelor's in psychology, right? And then realize like you can't do anything with that. You got to go get your master's. And it's like, how are they just finding this out? I mean, overall, dude, I'm so blown away by just your passion and your zeal that you're bringing to things, the way that you are introspective, the way that you are like reflecting, whether it's going through trauma in your household, whether it's moving, whether it's the death of a grandpa that you've loved and respected, on college, getting cheated on. I mean, you referred to that as fun. I know you're kind of sarcastic, but it's just like, you kind of have this positive outlook on things. And I think it's just, I don't know, it's awesome. And it probably bleeds into architecture, because I think we do need more people like you, like architects that are visionaries, that see the possibilities, that use their minds and their hands to create what others like us, can build and shape. And I just love it. I think it's so freaking cool. Yeah. And that's why, I mean, it's funny that I've always, ever since, I was a first year apprentice, I learned to read the architectural drawings. A lot of electricians, it's really funny. They'll say things like, I work off the electrical pages, which means they're only going to look at the electrical pages. They're going to stick to their little echo chamber and only look at what they have to do. Now, a good electrician will look at the MEP pages, which means mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, right? Because those are like the skilled trades, or is what they would call them. Yeah. And so they maybe venture out of their box a little bit, but not to make themselves uncomfortable. They're going to kind of stick with their crowd, But if you really want to be good in construction, you're going to learn the architectural, you're going to learn the elevation and the reflective ceiling plan and the structural, drawings and things like that. You're going to go deep. And I know I just sounded nerdy, but it was something that always just intrigued me because it was like, it almost made me think like, okay, I know the plug goes there, but why does it go there?
Right.
What is the end user, the teacher, the doctor, the restaurant, what are they using that plug for? And I feel like architectures just take this big view of things. So do you think like as you look at things in a big view that you lose sight of the specifics and the details, or are you able to look broad and narrow?
I think you have.
That's a weird question.
No, I think you have to do both. And I think what you're talking about is self-curiosity a little bit. And then if you're pushing yourself to learn more, take it to the next step. And I think what's so interesting in today's society is that we speak in generalities. But I think in order to be successful, you really have to have motivation from within. It comes down to the individual. Like we want to group everyone, but what you're talking about is like individual motivation and perseverance to get to that next level, like taking the step to look at the next sheets. And I think that's what architects do, the good ones, is they start absorbing as much knowledge as they possibly can, from construction to electrical to details to new technology to new materials to what the client needs. I mean, we have to wear so many hats and it's exhausting. But at the same time, there's so much to learn, so it's kind of invigorating at the same time. So it's kind of like this glutton for punishment type of setup.
Dude, Shane, it's funny to me how introspective you are, how thoughtful you are, and then at the start of this conversation, you're like, I've never really thought about this. And it's like, dude, if you're just winging this stuff, you're absolutely crushing it. So like, I want to almost just circle back again and say like, so what about your childhood did you glean? Or what about college did you glean? Like, keep talking about that stuff, because I think there's a lot of people right now, whether they're in high school, a lot of high school kids listen to this. Yeah. A lot of college kids listen to this. A lot of young professionals listen to this. So, like, Shane, dude, like, you're talking to a lot of people, a lot of little yous. Yeah. I mean, what do you think, like, people that are in college right now need to hear?
So I think in terms of college, I guess I would tell folks, even if you feel lost or you're not on the right path, to just keep going, because it's a step to the next thing. A lot of people are going to ridicule you because you don't feel like you have it all together, or you don't have a defined path to success. I think that mentality is a little bit dead, because you have to have patience and you have to have strategy. And the strategy right now is just going to college and figuring out who you are. You're so young, so young. Like, I look back and it was stupid how I thought I had everything put together and figured out. And so I guess I would say right now, enjoy finding yourself and fuck the critics a little bit. Because to me, you have to understand metrics. People are criticizing you because you don't have it put together, but you're in college. Other people didn't go to college. They're going to start a business. They're going to fail. They're going to go get stuck at a desk somewhere doing something, and they're probably going to get comfortable there. Maybe, maybe not. And they're going to spend the rest of their life there. That's comfort to a level that I never want to experience. You don't have it figured out yet, but you might graduate college. You might figure out this path, and your degree might get you there. You might meet someone in college. You might find an alumni that gets you there. Like, it's part of the process. So that you have to understand metrics and like long-term game. So I would say don't sweat it. Like, just keep going.
Yeah, and like what you said earlier about like, you have to live your life, and you're the culmination of a lot of like little encounters with people. Right. You don't have to say F them, like, I don't care what you say, you offer no value, but I don't necessarily have to live your life exactly how you want me to. Absolutely. I have to be happy, because I would push against and just say for a second, like, if you're happy going and working at UPS in the sales department and clocking in at a desk and clocking out and coaching your kids' Little League baseball team, like, if that's you, great. But if it's not you and you're just sitting there because you're scared or you're complacent, then that's bad. Yeah. And so I would say that's exactly more of what you're saying. It's like we all have to find ourselves, because as you said, like, you're stuck behind a desk. I'm like, well, if it's a dope desk with a dope view. Right.
And I would say as long as you're happy, but you can't dictate your happiness on other people's opinions of where you should be. Because, I mean, like, my stepdaughter says, I love burgers. I'm going to be a burger flipper. And I was like, that's freaking awesome. As long as you're the best burger flipper that there is and you make a delicious burger and you're happy doing it, like, that's fine. Because then she finds her fulfillment in something outside of a mark, which is whether it's a salary or a title or whatever it is. She finds happiness in burgers. And I think that's awesome. I mean, she's a kid, but...
Yeah. Have you watched that movie Founder on Netflix?
No, we started and I ended up turning it off, actually.
Why didn't you like it?
Well, the kids were around and there was some inappropriate parts. But.
So I understand right now every podcast listener thinks all I do is watch TV and watch movies, okay? But there's just these influential scenes where it's just like the McDonald's brothers... Dude, they just loved McDonald's, and like people, nowadays are like, McDonald's gross,
Right,
but it's like those guys, dude, they loved what they were doing and they were passionate about it. And, it's funny. Like nobody would have thought you could have been passionate about that.
Same goes to say about Sam Walton or any of the people who started some of the bigger corporations now. Like I actually had an individual put something drastic into perspective for me because I've been critical about Walmart for a long time. And he's like, did you know Walmart as a corporation has done more than the government will ever do? And not to get political, it's about the mission of that corporation. What they did is they actually took the box off of deodorant. So you know how deodorant used to come in boxes? Well, they're like, why
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it used to come in boxes. So they actually came up with an idea of cost savings to get rid of the boxes because they figured out it would save so much money, not only for them, but for the company and the end user. So they actually took that savings and reduced the cost of their meat. So they were feeding more low-income families just by that, I guess, efficiency or that little loophole or that tactic, that strategy to reduce their meat. Yeah, they wanted more customers and all that good stuff, but at the same time, there was a strategy to actually feed more low-income or impoverished families than a lot of other things did. And I didn't know that. I was so critical of something that I was so blind to. And I guess just that's the importance of, like, we talked about those minuscule interactions with people, is like, to speak to people in college, I would say don't be so idealistic. Because I white-knuckled all of my values, and I would not let anything in. And instead of forging those, I wish I would have been more open to hearing others. And that's exactly what that experience speaks to.
Oh, man. The art of listening is absolutely huge. I feel like it's hard to, and especially for someone like me who's a verbal processor who likes to talk like crazy, we live in a world right now where it is hard to have a discussion because it seems like as you're talking, the other person is just thinking about their response. They're not actually listening to what you're trying to say or where you're coming from or what experience shaped you to think the way that you do. They're just wanting to blast you or rebuttal you or anything like that. That's right. It's terrible for me, which I'm not saying poor me. It's just like, I'm a verbal processor. I'll say 25 terrible things to get to the good one, but it's my way of working out thoughts.
Absolutely.
And it's fun whenever you come in contact with the good people that will listen to you and tell you when you're wrong or help you see, but will listen to you. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, there's something about that healthy debate back and forth, not coming at someone to cut them down or automatically dismiss, but understand where they're trying to come from and then have that empathy it's actually a practice in discernment. Is do you want to give this person discernment from your perspective, even though you understand where they're coming from completely and respect it? I think that's what lacks in a lot of conversations today is first understanding, to have the goal to be patient and kind to someone and just provide discernment. You're not trying to reject them or dismiss them. And by the way, I did that for a long time, and my shrink actually said that's manipulation, and I never thought about it that way, but it is. And so don't just discredit and cut everyone down. It's a terrible, vile thing that we're seeing. And it sounds cheesy, and I can't believe I'm going to say it, but it breaks my heart a little bit. What I see in social media and just the quick discreditation of everyone's opinions and where they're coming from. It's so easy to label people. It's tough to see. No one wants to have understanding and actually care about where people are coming. You have understanding first, you might be able to speak to what their pain point is. Because people bitching actually means that they feel entitled to something. And so if you can figure out what that is, then maybe you can heal a wound instead of causing another one. And so it's just, it's tough. The world's tough.
Dude,
I think right now.
The more you talk, the more I just realize why you're such a freaking amazing architect. Because what I'm hearing from you is I really listen to people. I really care about where they're coming from and where they want to go. I want to do everything in my power to help them get there. I want to use all my past experiences, education, skills to use that power to push them and get them to think differently. We're going to, next week talk about architecture a lot more, but just to let you know, my business partner, Paul, is about as, bland and normal as it gets. I mean, white bread eating dude, right?
Yeah.
I remember I took him to a restaurant one time and they were like, today's special is a farm to table organic tomato sandwich. And I was like, oh no. And the waiter walked away and he's like, we'll never come here again. And it's like, we went to Freddy's steak burgers and
also delicious for the record.
But he's just like that. And so as you were talking and kind of showing your presentation of what you were thinking for our office space, he literally got just fist pumped in the air, excited. To be honest, if I would have thought like, man, is Shane or is Paul gonna like this? I probably would have voted no. I loved it. I thought it was amazing, but it was done in such a subtle way, not overpowering, listening, kind of an explanation of why. Little things like we have curved walls because of the sinusoidal wave of electricity is curved. Yeah. And so like the walls curved with that. It was just so amazing, dude. So it's no surprise to me that you're just a freaking crazy boss architect. And I'm so thankful to just kind of hear about your past and your education, your story, and just kind of get to know you a little bit more. And honestly, like one of the things I said early on is I feel like I've got to cross paths. So two things. Yeah. I get to cross paths with some of the most amazing people that are never going to be on the Forbes' top 40 and 40 list, or they're not going to be in the who's who because they don't care about marketing themselves. They're out there trying to solve problems, trying to instill good in the world, and they don't care if they get the credit for it. So part of what I want to do is say like, hey man, here's an awesome dude. You need to follow him. You need to pay attention to what he's doing, and figure out how to, get involved and helped and stuff. So as we wrap up this, before we get into architecture and stuff, I just want to know like what's kind of the closing thing you want to say to, the 18 or 21-year-old version of you out there right now?
It's kind of an oxymoron, but I would say learn how to accept love, especially if you've been through trauma or hardships, because I think that's something I still struggle with. Like hearing you say all these compliments to me is very hard. Like I don't even know what to do with it. It's because I almost just want to say no, because my chip on my shoulder is like I still have something to prove, or I still have something to give. It's not about me, it's about the world. But I would say accept love, learn to accept love, even at that young age. And the second one is don't fall in love so fast. I was quick, very, very quick to give my heart away to people that maybe didn't deserve it. And so I would say make them work for it too, and just kind of respect yourself and what you have to offer. And I just think, Winston Churchill said, if you're in hell, just keep going. And sometimes I think when you're at that age, no matter what you're going through, it's a hard age, high school in general, and early college years, everyone's in hell a little bit. So just keep going, because it gets better. It definitely gets better.